Welcome to this video. My name is Mark Scythian. The date today is August 14th, 2024. So this video is going to focus on the concept of pleomorphism. And it's interesting that we have two correlations. Of course, if we look at a cell as in a biological cell, animal, plant, etc., a biological cell in comparison to a molecule, two or more atoms, we can consistently observe that biological cells are made up of molecules and atoms, but molecules themselves, especially inorganic molecules, are not cells, and organic molecules are also, or at least may not be, cells. So we're focusing on the DNA molecule itself being organic, but then again not a molecule, while also consisting of molecules. So it's kind of interesting that obviously there is a correlation between a cell and a molecule, but then at the same time it's more or less a one-way relationship, even though there is a two-way correlation. So obviously the so-called missing link is the resonant frequency that surrounds both. This is also known as the morphogenic resonance. So let's say we took a container, like for example a plastic container, for which we could seal and sterilize prior to placing a fresh healthy apple into. So here we have a fresh healthy apple placed into a clean, sealed, and sterilized plastic container, which is airtight. While kept in a relatively room temperature environment. No infestation within the apple and container. So we let it sit in the room temperature environment, and the observation is 5 weeks later, fruit flies, maggots, and fungus infest the apple and container. So this observation would be an example of pleomorphic transformation, or just pleomorphism. So we have a frequency reduction in that morphogenic resonance around the healthy apple during the rotting or rot process. And so then the resonant frequency between the properties of a cell and a molecule reach a certain parity of consistency or consistence, and so that cell's DNA is transformed pleomorphically, first by means of polymorphic transformation, and then a new type of DNA is correlating to that frequency change. So the cell is transformed, and the pleomorphic DNA molecule is then formed, and this then hatches into the progenitor of the maggot, fruit flies, and fungus. So fungus or fungi. So this is 3 different DNA types as an example, but we often will see maggots, fruit flies, and fungi. So assume you took the apple out, and visibly before opening up the container, you can see a few fruit flies in there. You can see maybe a maggot or two. You can see some mold and fungi and fungus. But when you dissect the apple, you see an infestation and even larva hatching out of that biological material. So the conventional wisdom is that the maggots or the disease or the infection or the disease vector are coming externally when they're actually not. They're actually correlating to the internal transformation due to some sort of a frequency change. In this case, it's induced by just not taking care of the apple, not eating it, letting it rot, not refrigerating it, etc. So the same could be applied to any biological material. So the conclusion is that disease vectors are internal, not external. And this would correlate with biological frequency reduction of the morphogenic field during the rotting process, or the opposite during some sort of maintenance process where a biological sample or entity is enhanced or taken care of properly. So obviously the frequency would increase, and then the outcome becomes native to the biological material, the cell replication, the health, the maintenance, etc. So it is probably incorrect to think that disease itself is originating from outside of an organism, when in fact it is the frequency state of that organism, for which, when reaching a parity between the molecular and cellular interrelationship, would then manifest a change in certain DNA in certain cells to then pleomorphically change into what would be an infestation or a disease, or intercellular parasites, which are probably not understood on the Western sense, because when the Western world thinks of parasites, they think of undeveloped countries, but we're talking about intercellular parasites that are within the domain of microscopy, something from a few hundred to a few thousand nanometers to something like a larger molecule size, but it's not something visible to the naked eye. You couldn't open up an organism and say, oh, I see visible parasites. No, we're talking about intercellular parasites. So that's probably more a broad blanket term for pleomorphic or pleomorphic cellular alterations, changes, transformations, or just plainly pleomorphism. So in a nutshell, you can have one DNA that its resonant frequency changes due to some good or bad event or condition, and then instead of having all these diseases or infestations or disease vectors sourcing from an external point, they're actually a polymorphic slash pleomorphic change of that cell count into a new organism. And so it looks like something infected or affected somebody from an external environment, but it came from within. So this is a really profound experiment which you can practice. I'm sure some people left some food, or they left something like an apple or a banana or something. They left it in an airtight container, and they realized, how did maggots get in here? They didn't get in there. They were actually pleomorphic conversions of that material. So this tells us a lot that actual health maintenance is about keeping toxicity out of the body and keeping a very frequent purified water hydration to flush out all of the resonant frequencies emanating from waste and debris and or toxicity, which could then lower the morphogenic frequency of the organism. And so if you do have an issue or something does occur, it's happening from within, either from poor hydration or perhaps from psychological stress or anything that would compel someone to choose to lower their mindset or their mood. So this is both a psychological and a physical maintenance combined, and both are effective to the pleomorphism. So maybe the main takeaway is that whatever you do, try to stay detoxified with purified water, and no matter what happens, keep a proactive mindset, because then your morphogenic resonance, its frequency, is kept at a high enough frequency to maintain health. Everything else would be correlating or reserved for making sure your internal biome is kept clean and detoxified with as much purified water as you can consume. So thus flushing out the toxicity. So these toxins could be eaten up by your own macrophages, etc. But if neglected or unaware, these would eventually break down pleomorphically into what would be bacteria counts or intercellular parasites, and then you have other symptoms and issues and health problems. So this very much proves that the incursion of disease is an internally sourced environment, and it's not coming from outside of the environment, other than physical injury and things that would alter the mechanical structure of cells. So keep this in mind. Main takeaway is that the conclusion is disease vectors are internal, not external, sourcing from a frequency drop in the morphogenic resonance. Thank you for watching this video, and have a great day.